Floating off the ground when you hear that sound. Let it all out. Now off the ground when you hear that sound. Let it all out. Now hit it in. Feel it like a wind. You can do what you do, but stay who you been.
Move, bitch. Get out the way. Get out the way, bitch. Get out the way. Move, bitch. Get out the way. Get out the way, bitch. Get out the way.
Closing time.
The fucking retardo awesome.
Time of the day.
Closing time. Awful.
Time of the day.
What the fuck?
Big purple dildo.
It's cold and this could have rolled under
Your ass.
there years ago. There.
You little dead bitch.
You'll drop dead soon.
The fuck?
What the hell just happened?
Someone tried to throw away a foreskin.
Pinch-O-Matic has saved you 5
$3.50.
cents.
But Mr.
Latino man.
I found that under the
Ass. And tomorrow, a customer will find it in his ass.
but it's old and cold and so very full of mold.
Guess what? I don't care.
You're not to make another
Dildo.
until that one is sold.
Or else I'll kill you.
The next day.
Order up, Squidward.
Sponge bag. Could I get one with less?
Dog shit?
Sorry, Squidward. Mr.
Lati-
His orders.
You have got to be fucking kidding me.
Here you are, sir. One.
Ass rammer.
Ah, lug nuts.
We haven't had a customer in weeks. I wonder if it's the new placemats.
What the fuck?
Motherfucking
Have you lost your
Shit.
It's that old
Dildo.
you keep trying to sell to everybody. It's a
Bunch of crap. Oh, that's bullshit.
Bring it here, Spongy. Why is it in it?
Because it.
Fuck my sister.
That was not very nice of you, crackhead.
You two would have never have lasted in it. Let's see how bad you are.
Fuck me.
Oh, shut up.
Shut up. Will you like that? You like that? Slow down. I'm gonna spurt. Sorry. You shouldn't have punched me
See?
so hard.
Good enough to...
Shove it up your ass.
Oh, look. An ambulance.
Who gives a shit?
Sponge. Fuck it.
Yeah?
Make sure you wrap up that son of a bitch. I'm not finished with it yet.
What the fuck?
Well, Mr. Mexican, you gave us quite.
Boner.
So I'm gonna be okay, Doc?
Let's just check your chart. Let's see here.
What?
Oh shit!
Horrid shit! This is awful! Everything okay, Doc?
Don't touch me, motherfucker.
Well, I'm right f***ed, aren't I?
Oh no! It's the flying Nazi!
Latino man.
I'm
A
not...
Latino man.
I'm,
Jimmy, Big Boner.
Oh, sorry. I must have the wrong... excuse me, tranny.
What? God. Sleeping, dude.
I'm looking for you.
A Latino man.
Oh, he's in that room right there.
No, that's... Long.
Excuse you?
So, you You thought you could fuck with me? What do you want from me? I'm here to escort you to the resting place of all.
What assholes?
Brown town.
What the fuck?
Why do I have to go? In a hellhole! I'm not a bad motherfucker. Bullshit! But you were the son of a bitch. And sons of a bitches!
Fucking sucks.
Next up! Here we are!
Jesus Christ.
Where does it smell?
Like demon jizz.
Satan. Jack.
Skull. Here. These are his
Sex toys.
Get in! Oh, please, mister!
Nazi.
I don't wanna be his sex slave. I'll do anything. Please, give me another chance. Come
fucking retard?
Don't be a douche.
Mommy! Alright, stop your
Bitch.
I'll give you another chance. But you must always be
Long and hard.
never.
The son of a bitch.
You have me word as a.
Study vaginal belch.
Mr. Krabs, use clippers. I could use these.
The hell are you doing, dumb bitch? You shouldn't be going through Mr.
Latino man.
Fucking shit! You kick your fucking ass! God damn it!
Sponge bag. I told you what the doctor said. Mr.
Latino man.
is dead. Now keep quiet so I can hear the tumblers in his safe.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
Hey, boys! Holy fuck!
Baba Booey.
I knew it! You're alive! Dick! Where'd look? It's Mr. Mexican Stinky Mouse! Isn't this too good to be true?
You fucker! You know, boys, being sick made me do a lot of thinking. My whole life has been about
Big old dick.
saving shit,
Stole your
money.
I don't fucking care.
Oh shit! Well, you get the picture. But
Not anymore.
you're looking at the no improved none,
Bitch.
Mr.
Latino man.
Welcome all, welcome! Hello, little fuck. What you got there?
A crabby
Dildo.
That's right, bitch.
You know what that means, right?
still gotta go jack off.
No, you dumbass.
It means free.
Bitches.
Gee,
Thanks.
I thought you were a cheap old.
Son of a bitch.
I was, son, I was. Free
Bitches.
for everyone and free.
Unprotected sex.
Hello, boy. Say, we're sticking.
Oh, he's taking a
Bunch of shit.
in your office. I mean,
Sex dungeon.
Hit me harder, Daddy. Great.
Excuse me, but I dropped my.
tampon.
You fucker.
Yes, sir.
Sorry about the confusion. Free.
Bitches.
My man.
Sup, dick shit?
How's the break coming?
Should be over in a couple of hours. Have sponge bags and back.
Sex toys.
Will ya?
Sure thing, Squidward.
Take it easy.
Are you enjoying?
50 Shades of Grey.
This pornography is really quite good.
Did you seriously just quote 50 Shades of Grey at a funeral?
Shut up, bitch. You love it.
Look at all those
Motherfuckers.
It sure does feel good to be.
Long and hard.
Here's your mail.
Thank you. You look.
Yeah, these
Ass whooping.
work are doing wonders for me.
Credit card bills. Well, I knew this was coming. Let's see what the damage is. Only
$153.
That's not so bad. I'll just subtract it from today's profit. And
I am
Fuck.
how delightful.
Word, I'm worried about Mr. Mexican Stinky Mouse.
You can say that again.
How are we gonna get paid?
Jesus.
Mr. Pancakes! You sure are taking total bankruptcy well.
Oh, it's just a bad dream. I'll wake up soon.
Dream.
That's right, bitch.
I'm still in the hospital, sleeping like a retard.
You checked out of the hospital this morning.
Here's the bill.
You mean I'm awake? No more
sex with men.
Give me back them
Bitches.
Taiwanese ladyboys.
show's over.
Blood wizard.
I feel like shit.
Hey, it's my lucky day. A penny.
Your luck just ran out. What the fuck? Unhand that penny.
Or else I'll kill you.
That little display of parsimonious penny pinching just earned you a nice little spot in to the end of time. I'm not son of a bitch. I'm fucking hard.
You almost tore a man's arm off for a penny.
You goddamn weirdo!
God damn it! Will you semen stay? Just leave me alone. This is the last time. The last goddamn time I've been fucked by your stupid ass.
I do not give a fuck.
Well, a deal's a deal. Let's go.
Wait just a
Motherfucking
second.
Who dares backsass the flying
Nazi.
That would be me, Sponge Baguette Backsass Pants. I say you got the wrong man. This
Latino man.
is the most
Long and hard.
big
Dick.
non-bastard
Man.
in the world.
He'd sell your soul for a couple of bucks.
I bet my soul he wouldn't.
You got yourself a bet. You fucker. I'll let you stay, but first, help me settle a bet. If you had to choose between SpongeBob and all the money I have in my
Asshole.
which would you take?
That depends. How much money we talking about?
What are you?
Cents.
I'll take the money. What the fuck?
Here you go, Krabs. Cents. Next up.
Check this fucking shit out.
Money!
Mr. Sleep-deprived stoner.
I ask you one question.
How could you trade SpongeBob
Faggot.
for 3 cents?
You think I could have gotten more?
He stuck up for you and you sold him out.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Oh, I want another chance. I didn't learn anything. I lost my best dick jerking faggot. I don't want this bullshit. Money. I want Faggot back. Oh.
Here, take him back.
You heard what I said about the money?
Heard what you said? I couldn't hear myself thinking. Shit. I only had him for 30 seconds, and it's jelly
Fucking this.
and mermaid.
Slut. That.
Why, not giving him back is a fate worse than death.
Sometime bring your own net.
He's your problem now.
About trading you for pocket change.
Let's say no more.
You son of a bitch.
You did it for the crusty.
Latino.
I would have done the same thing.
You would have?
Fuck no, Applehead.
Nazi's residence.
So, as I was saying, you and me gotta hang out more. Well, what nights are good for you? Here are the nights that are good for me. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I gotta work. I work the...
You son of a bitch.